Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds on a market maybe you haven't thought much about, the global offset ink market.
That's right. We've got this detailed analysis, a forecast actually, from Cognitive Market Research. It covers 2021 right through to 2033.
And our plan is to basically unpack the key numbers and trends from this report because, while offset ink might sound super specific.
It really is. But it gives us this fascinating window into broader stuff like global industrial growth and, well, what's happening with print media across the world.
Exactly. We're hunting for the story behind the stats, region by region. And just quickly, offset ink, that's the stuff used for high volume printing, right? Like newspapers, magazines, packaging.
Books, brochures, yeah, all that kind of traditional large-scale printing. So tracking its market, it really does give you a pulse on those industries.
It's a neat way to see how one component reflects bigger economic shifts.
Precisely. It's a great example.
Okay, let's jump in. Starting globally, the big picture, size and growth.
Right. So globally, the report pegs the market value in 2021 at $411.56 million. So just over $4.1 billion.
Wow, okay. Over 4 billion just for this type of ink. That's pretty substantial already.
It really is. And it's growing. The projection for 2025 is almost $4.7 billion, $689 million.
And looking further out to 2033.
They're forecasting it to hit $698.57 million. So just over $6 billion by then.
Okay, so clear growth there. What does that work out to annually, the CAGR?
Yeah, the compound annual growth rate globally
Yeah.
across that whole 2021-2033 period is calculated at 3.34%.
3.34%. It's not exactly explosive, maybe?
No, not explosive, but you have to consider what it is. For a mature industrial product like offset ink, 3.34% represents, really solid, consistent growth over more than a decade. It shows the market isn't just stable, it's definitely expanding.
That's a good point. Okay, so globally healthy. Now let's start breaking it down by region. How about North America?
Okay, North America. In 2021, the value was $1,143.01 million. So about $1.14 billion.
And the projection for 2033?
Forecast to reach $1,591.73 million.
Yeah.
Nearly $1.6 billion.
Right, and the growth rate, the CAGR for North America?
That comes in a bit lower than the global average. It's 2.903%, just under 3%.
Interesting. And within North America, I noticed the U.S. is dominant, obviously, starting around $894 million in 2021.
Biggest slice. Projected to hit about $1.23 billion by 2033.
But its CAGR is slightly lower, 2.82%. Canada and Mexico are actually a bit higher, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Canada's 2021 value was about $160 million, growing to $233 million, and its CAGR is 3.26%.
And Mexico?
Mexico started at $88 million, forecast to reach $127 million, with a CAGR of 3.065%. So both slightly outpacing the U.S. growth rate, but the U.S. volume is still huge.
Seems like it. Established print industry is holding their own.
Okay, let's hop over to Europe. What are the numbers telling us there?
Europe's market in 2021 was $900.431 million, so just about $900 million.
Projected to hit $1,280.7 million by 2033, so around $1.28 billion.
And the European CAGR, is that closer to the global rate?
It is, yeah. Comes in at 3.157%, a bit higher than North America's, closer to that global 3.34%. The source actually mentions Europe experiencing a steady recovery, and this seems to fit.
Okay. And within Europe, Germany looks like a significant player.
Definitely. Germany started at about $182 million in 2021, projected to reach almost $273 million by 2033. And its CAGR is strong for the region, 3.526%.
The UK as well. Looks like decent growth there, too.
Yep. UK moving from about $97 million towards $143 million with a 3.39% CAGR. France is a bit more moderate, going from roughly $91 million to $119 million.
And there are numbers for Italy, Russia, Spain, Sweden, quite a few others listed.
Yeah, the report details projections for them, too. 2033 values ranging from around $36 million for Luxembourg up to over $150 million for Russia.
But the one that jumped out at me was the rest of Europe category. That growth rate is surprisingly high.
Ah, yes. That's a really interesting point. The CAGR for rest of Europe is 4.178%, projected to reach over $261 million by 2033.
That's the highest rate in Europe by a fair bit. What do you make of that?
Well, it suggests, doesn't it, that maybe some of the stronger growth momentum or perhaps recovery in print demand is happening outside those traditionally largest listed economies. It really highlights that the steady recovery isn't uniform across the entire continent.
Fascinating. Okay, now let's pivot to Asia Pacific. The report called this region out for accelerated growth. What's the data show?
Oh yeah, this is where the numbers really pop. Asia Pacific started as the biggest market in 2021, over $1.5 billion. That's $1,504.83 million.
And the 2033 forecast.
Projected to grow to $354.05 million.
Right. And the CAGR must be higher then.
Significantly higher. For Asia Pacific overall, it's 3.959%, clearly outpacing the global average and the rates in North America and Europe. This region is like the main engine here.
And who's leading that charge? China and India.
Absolutely. China's numbers are striking. Started at about $605 million in 2021, forecast to reach $991 million by 2033, and its CAGR, an impressive 4.463%. That's the highest single country rate listed.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
463%. That's the highest single country rate listed in the whole report.
Wow, and India.
India's right there with it. Very strong growth. From $275 million in 2021, projected to hit $461 million by 2033. The CAGR is 4.432%, so incredibly close to China's.
Okay, so China and India are really powering this global market forward. What about other parts of APAC?
Still significant markets. Japan's projected at over $241 million by 2033. South Korea near $118 million. Australia, Singapore, Taiwan are smaller, sort of in the $40 to $56 million range by 2033.
In Southeast Asia as a whole.
Also showing healthy growth. Forecast to reach over $330 million, and the rest of APAC category adds another $140 million plus.
So the data absolutely backs up that accelerated growth point from the source. You can really see the industrial expansion and demand surging there.
Exactly. Think about packaging, publishing, commercial printing, and needed for growing economies and large populations. It makes perfect sense.
Okay, let's move on. How about South America?
South America. Market value in 2021 was $267.251 million.
Projected out to 2033.
Forecast is $463.491 million.
And the growth rate, how does that compare?
Interestingly, South America's CAGR is 3.511%. It's higher than the global average of 3.34%. So stronger growth than North America or Europe as well.
Huh. Okay. Any particular standouts within the region?
Brazil, it's the largest market there, moving from about $91 million in 2021 to a projected $162 million by 2033. And its CAGR is the highest in the region at 3.698%.
Right. And then Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile are listed too, plus a big chunk for the rest of South America.
Yeah, Argentina projected over $53 million, Colombia around $38 million, down to Chile near $21 million. And the rest of the South America segment is quite large, projected over $166 million.
So the source mentioned Latin America's rising print economy, and these growth rates, especially Brazil's, seem to really reflect
They certainly do. It paints a picture of expansion in print-reliant sectors there.
Okay, now for the regions showing slower growth, according to the report. Let's look at the Middle East first.
Right. The Middle East market started at $197.355 million in 2021.
And the forecast for 2033?
It's projected to reach $262.238 million.
Okay, so what's the CAGR there? That looks like slower growth.
It is significantly slower. The CAGR for the Middle East is calculated at 1.929%.
Wow, yeah, that's quite a bit lower than the other big regions we've discussed.
It really stands out. Within the region, Saudi Arabia is projected to be the largest market by 2033 at around $105 million. Turkey next at nearly $60 million. Then you have UAE, Egypt, Qatar, clustered around the $25 to $30 million mark.
And the rest of Middle East is pretty small. That lower overall CAGR is the main story here, though.
It is. And like we discussed, the report gives us the what the numbers, but not explicitly the why. We can speculate it might relate to the specific industrial mix, maybe faster digital media adoption impacting traditional print, or other local economic factors.
Yeah, the numbers definitely prompt those kinds of questions about the underlying dynamics. Okay, last region, Africa.
Africa. This was the smallest regional market listed in 2021, starting at $98.6774 million, just under $100 million.
And projected to reach.
Forecast to hit $146.366 million by 2033.
What about the growth rate, the CAGR?
Africa's CAGR is 2.311%. So similar to the Middle East, it's below the global average and below regions like Asia Pacific or South America. It is, however, slightly higher than the Middle East's rate.
And the key countries within Africa.
The 2033 projections show South Africa as the largest market, forecast at over $62 million. Nigeria follows at over $62 million, and the rest of Africa category makes up over $45 million.
So definitely a smaller market overall compared to others, but still growing over this period just at a slower clip.
Exactly. It confirms growth, but positions Africa, along with the Middle East, at the lower end of the growth spectrum for this particular market compared to the dynamism elsewhere.
Okay, let's try and pull all this together. We've painted a picture of a multi-billion-dollar global market for offset ink, and overall it's growing steadily.
Right, that 3.34% global CAGR shows consistent expansion. But the real story, as you said, is the regional variation. It's quite stark in places.
Yeah, Asia Pacific is the clear leader, the growth engine. China and India with those huge CAGRs over 4.4% just points to massive industrial activity and print demand.
Absolutely. Then you have South America, also growing faster than the global average, suggesting that rising print economy, the source mentioned, with Brazil leading.
Meanwhile, North America and Europe are these huge established markets providing massive volume but growing more moderately, closer to the global average. Though we saw that interesting spike in the rest of Europe.
Consistent with mature economies, but with internal variations.
And then contrasting sharply, you have the Middle East and Africa showing significantly slower growth rates, which makes you wonder about the specific factors at play there regarding print versus digital or the pace of industrial development in print-heavy sectors.
It really brings that concluding sentence from the source to life, doesn't it? That idea of a dynamic interplay of industrial development and print media demand, manifesting differently everywhere from China's acceleration to Europe's recovery to Latin America's rise. The numbers just ground that observation.
So the so what moment for you listening. Why wade through all these ink market numbers? What does it tell you?
Well, I think it's a fantastic illustration of how tracking something seemingly niche, like offset ink, gives you real, tangible clues about the health and direction of the broader global economy.
How so?
Because demand for this ink is directly linked to manufacturing, packaging, advertising, publishing core economic activities. Seeing where demand is booming tells you where physical production and commerce associated with print are strongest.
Right, so it flags where industrial expansion is rapid, like Asia Pacific.
Exactly. Or where established print sectors are holding steady, maybe like North America or parts of Europe. And where growth is slower, it might signal different patterns of media consumption, or perhaps different types of industrial focus taking hold. It's a concrete indicator of these global shifts.
Okay, good summary. So wrapping up this deep dive, the offset ink market, drawing from that cognitive market research analysis, is a big global business, but with really diverse growth stories region by region. It's a clear reflection of different paces of development and print demand worldwide.
Couldn't have said it better. And maybe a final thought just for you to consider, based purely on the numbers we've walked through. Which region's projected growth rate, high or low, did you find most surprising? And what might that specific trend suggest to you about the future of printing and the industries that rely on it in that part of the world?
That's a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Okay, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into something you probably see every day, but maybe don't think much about. The global offset ink market.
That's right. It's everywhere, really.
And this deep dive, it's based on some excerpts you shared from Market Scope by Cognitive. Seems like a pretty detailed look at this specific printing world.
It is. It gives a good snapshot of the key dynamics.
So our mission here is to unpack what that source reveals. What's driving growth, the big challenges it's up against, and how it's all changing.
Exactly.
Because you might think, ink, really?
Yeah.
In this digital age?
Yeah.
But the source suggests it's, well, surprisingly dynamic.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Yeah.
But the source suggests it's, well, surprisingly dynamic.
It absolutely is. The material really lays out those core areas.
Yeah.
The growth forces, the hurdles, and importantly, the evolving trends that are reshaping things.
Okay, so let's start with growth. What does the source say is really pushing this market forward?
Well, one of the biggest drivers highlighted is demand from the packaging industry. That seems key.
Packaging.
Right.
Makes sense, like making products look good.
Precisely. The source stresses how crucial attractive printed packaging is for brands trying to stand out. Think food, beverages, cosmetics.
And e-commerce, too, I imagine, all those boxes arriving.
Definitely. E-commerce is mentioned, and for that premium look and feel, you need these high-quality offset inks. It's vital for impact.
Okay. But what about, like, traditional print?
Mm-hmm.
Newspapers, magazines. Is offset still big there?
It is, especially for high-volume stuff. The source points out it's still super cost-effective for those huge print runs, reliability, low cost per item.
Gotcha. So it's not just packaging. But it's not standing still either technologically.
Not at all. The source actually emphasizes tech advancements as another growth driver. We're talking innovations in the inks themselves.
Like what? What makes them better?
Things like better smudge resistance, faster drying times, and a big one, being more environmentally friendly.
Ah, the eco angle.
Mm,
That leads to specific ink types, doesn't it? The source mentions some.
yes, particularly soy-based inks and UV-curable inks. The source indicates these are really transforming the market.
Why the shift? Just companies wanting to be green.
That's part of it, but it's also driven hard by regulations. Stricter rules about chemical emissions, specifically VOCs.
VOCs, right? Volatile organic compounds. Stuff that evaporates from, like, older solvent inks.
Exactly. So moving to low VOC or zero VOC options like soy or UV inks is, well, it's a pretty big deal for compliance and the environment.
Okay, so growth from packaging, high volume efficiency, and new ink tech. But it can't be all smooth sailing. What challenges does the source bring up?
No, definitely not. There are significant hurdles. Maybe the most obvious one mentioned is the ongoing decline in traditional print media consumption.
Right, fewer people buying physical newspapers or magazines.
Exactly. And fewer brochures, fewer books sometimes too.
Yeah.
That directly cuts down the sheer volume of ink needed for those applications.
And those environmental rules we just mentioned, they're a challenge too, presumably.
Absolutely. The source notes that the scrutiny on those older solvent-based inks is getting tougher. Manufacturers have to invest, reformulate. It costs money and effort.
Okay, what else? Competition.
Yes, competition from digital printing. While offset is king for huge runs, the source points out digital's growing popularity. It's efficient for shorter runs, customized jobs.
Variable data printing, that kind of thing.
Precisely. Areas where traditional offset isn't always as flexible or cost-effective.
And one more. Seems like there's another factor.
Yes. Raw materials. The source mentions vulnerability to supply chain disruptions, price swings and things like resins, pigments, oils that can really hit manufacturing costs hard.
So declining traditional demand, tough regulations, digital competition, and shaky raw material costs. It sounds tough. How's the market adapting? What trends are emerging?
Well, it is adapting. A major trend, as we touched on, is the surge in UV and LED curable inks.
Why are they so popular now?
The source highlights the benefits. They dry almost instantly with specific light, meaning faster production. Plus, they use less energy than heat drying, and critically, very low or no VOCs. They fit modern presses well.
Makes sense. And the broader sustainability theme.
That's huge. It comes through strongly in the source's trends section. Companies are actively developing low VOC options, vegetable oil bases, even biodegradable solutions.
So it's beyond just ticking regulatory boxes now.
It seems so. It's about getting green certifications, appealing to brands and consumers who care about sustainability. It's becoming a selling point.
Interesting. Any other trends? Anything about new uses for offset?
Yes, actually. Growing interest in customization and specialty printing, even within offset.
Right.
The source talks about inks for niche things, security features maybe,
Yeah.
striking metallic effects, really high gloss finishes.
Stuff that maybe only offset can achieve that well.
Potentially, or where it offers a specific quality or cost advantage for those effects. It's about finding new value.
And globally, any geographic trends?
The source points to expansion, especially in packaging print within emerging economies. A rising middle class means more consumer goods, which means...
More packaging.
Yeah.
And more ink needed for it.
Exactly. Creates significant opportunities there.
So if you pull all that together, the picture the source paints isn't just about decline. It's more like transformation.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's not just shrinking. It's redefining itself. Using new tech, responding to environmental pressures, finding new niches like premium packaging.
So why should you, listening right now, care about the ink on, say, your cereal box or a catalog? The source suggests it's actually a window into bigger things.
It really is. It reflects these major global shifts, how we consume things, the relentless push of technology, and how much environmental factors now weigh on industry.
Yeah, the source definitely shows this offset ink market as a kind of microcosm. You see the push-pull between tradition and innovation, environmental responsibility, changing global demand, especially in packaging.
It's quite a story for something seemingly so simple.
It truly is. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A material like ink telling this complex story of adaptation. What other everyday things around us might be reflecting similar massive economic and environmental trends if we just looked a bit closer?
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.